Eat these foods to keep your blood counts up during chemo. The number one reason why your chemo could be delayed is because of your blood counts, low white blood cells. Now, your team will likely say that there is nothing you can do to get your blood counts up any faster. You're stuck. But this is not true. You need very specific nutrients to help create new white blood cells. If you're not getting these nutrients through your food, then your counts will drop and your chemo will be delayed. This is obviously not what you want when you're going through chemo. In this video, I'm showing you exactly what you need to know about your blood counts during chemo, what you can specifically do to keep your blood counts up, and what specific foods you need to eat to raise your blood counts and keep your treatment on schedule. After my stage 3 cancer diagnosis, I would have done anything to keep my chemo on track with no delays. I wanted to be cancer-free, and I needed treatment to help me get there. Now, your immune-fighting cells, they're made in your bone marrow. Bone marrow can be found in the large bones in your body, places like your pelvis, your ribs, or your femurs. Now, bone marrow is like a special factory inside your bones where these immune-fighting cells are made. It creates different types of blood cells that our body needs to stay healthy. There are 3 main types of blood cells that are made in the bone marrow. Red blood cells. Now, these are like tiny delivery trucks that carry oxygen from your lungs to different parts of your body. Red blood cells can be impacted by chemotherapy, but to a lesser extent. But these next 2 cell lines are what you truly need to know about as a cancer survivor. White blood cells. These are like brave little soldiers that defend our body against different types of germs. They help your immune system fight off infection and let us stay healthy. Now, if you hear someone refer to neutrophils or ANC, this is a type of white blood cell. There are other types of white blood cells too, but they're less important for women who are going through chemotherapy. And your bone marrow, it also makes platelets. Think of platelets as tiny little healers. When you get a cut or a scrape, it's platelets that rush to that site and make a clot to help stop the bleeding. They play an important role in helping with wound healing. And here is how your bone marrow and these germ-fighting cells are impacted by chemotherapy. White blood cells are like having this army of little soldiers to protect you. They're like little personalized soldiers designed specifically for you and your body. Chemo works to fight cancer by, of course, going after cancer cells, but it also goes after good cells. This is because chemo targets rapidly dividing cells, rapidly growing cells. We know that cancer grows at a faster pace, so chemo will target these cells. But this also means that chemo will target a lot of rapidly dividing cells in your body. This is something like bone marrow. Because of this, chemo is going to make it so that you have fewer of these soldiers to help protect you and fight off germs while you're going through treatment. It's like having a smaller army to protect you from getting sick. The result is that chemo is going to lower these cells and put you at a higher risk of getting an infection. Now, you might be thinking, no big deal, right? What does a common cold or cough really do anyways? Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit more serious than that. If your white blood cell count drops really low, then you could be open to life-threatening illnesses. Even a common cold could hit you so hard that you end up in the hospital. It's because you have fewer of those soldiers to defend you. Now, all chemo and treatment centers are slightly different on what they use as their threshold for what your white blood cells and your platelets need to be to continue on with treatment. Check with your specific treatment center and protocol if you want that exact number that you need to be hitting. The trouble with not meeting your blood count treatment threshold because your blood counts have dropped too low is that your treatment will be delayed, probably by about a week. But it could be longer if your blood counts don't come up. This sucks because, of course, you want to stay on track with your treatment. Any delays in your treatment means that your treatment plan isn't happening the way your team designed it to happen. And then you start worrying about if these delays are going to mean your treatment won't be as effective. The good news is that it's quite predictable when your blood counts are going to drop after each chemotherapy. Each treatment is slightly different, but the drop in your blood counts, also known as the nadir, it happens around 7 to 10 days after chemo. So that means the days immediately after chemo, well, your immune system hasn't really been impacted yet. A lot of women mistakenly think that as soon as they get chemo treatment, they're at a higher risk of infection. While it's not a bad idea to keep yourself healthy and to be cautious, your blood counts likely won't drop until about a week after your treatment. But what can you do about all this? You want to stay healthy, you want to keep your treatment on schedule, so what do? Here is exactly what you can do to increase your blood counts and keep them high. Now, there are a lot of powerful things you can do with your food, but first we need to mention a really strong drug that can help boost up your white blood cell count. These are drugs called colony stimulating factor, also known under the brand name as filgrastim. This medication boosts up your white blood cell count. The hope is that you can stay on track with your treatment and the treatment can be as effective as possible. But it also protects you against febrile neutropenia. This is when you have a fever and low blood counts. The alarming part about febrile neutropenia is that, well, when your blood counts are low, a lot of the common signs of infection, like redness or pus, they're not there anymore. But you will still have a fever. Sometimes a fever is the only way you can catch a life-threatening infection. So if you're getting chemo and you have a fever, you need to go to the emergency room ASAP. This could be a very serious situation and you need to seek out help. But not everyone will actually need this medication. So if you're struggling with low blood counts, ask your team for more information. They'll make sure you get the right treatment to help keep you on track through your chemo. Okay, so what about foods that can boost your white blood cell count and keep you on track? Number one is eating good quality protein. Your body needs amino acids to make white blood cells, and protein is where you get your amino acids. So if you're not eating enough protein or good quality protein, then you won't have the amino acids needed to actually create new white blood cells. Obviously, protein is a big one, but how do you start to do this? How do you actually add in more protein into your diet? Especially when you're not feeling well. Good quality protein sources include things like chicken, fish, or black beans. Now, most people will eat at least some of these foods. But what I notice the most with women I work with in the Cancer Freedom Program is that they're not eating enough protein. You want to focus on bringing the amount of protein you eat up, a larger serving size. Now, of course, your specific protein target needs to be individualized to you, your body, and your treatment. But an easy way to start is to just focus on eating some protein at every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and supper. In North America, so many of us don't eat enough protein because our meals are mainly carbohydrates. Now, there's nothing wrong with carbohydrates, but as a cancer survivor, you need to focus on getting protein to help bring your white blood cell counts up during chemo. This is what's going to make a big difference. A breast cancer survivor that I work with in the Cancer Freedom Program, well, she really struggled with her white blood cell counts. They were low throughout her treatment, and even after she finished chemo, they stayed low. Her oncologist did not know why her blood counts would not come up, and she said all that she could do was to keep going, stay healthy, and hopefully they would rebound. Then I started working with her. And with a few simple changes to her foods, her white blood cells came back up, she had more energy, she was more active, and she felt more like herself overall. Okay, but on to the next food that can bring up your blood count. Eggs. Your body needs vitamin B12 to make new white blood cells. Eggs are an excellent source of vitamin B12. Now, I pick eggs because they're also a really great protein source. So you'll be getting both the protein you need and the vitamin B12. The nice thing about eggs is even if you really can't tolerate eating them either fried or scrambled or hard boiled, you can add them to a bunch of different recipes where you can't taste them at all. Many of the recipes in my free Cancer Remission Cookbook include eggs for this specific reason. You can download your free copy of my Cancer Remission Cookbook. I'll put the link right below. Now, of course, there are some rather obvious things you should be doing in addition to eating these foods to keep your white blood cell counts up during chemo. Washing your hands is key. You need to do this, but also the people in contact with you need to do this. You'll also want to stay away from people who are sick. This is tough because when you're going through chemo, people want to see you. And they can, but just not when they're sick. The next food that you can eat to bring up your white blood cell counts during chemo is dark leafy greens. Your body also needs folate to make new white blood cells, and dark leafy greens are full of folate. Really, the perfect breakfast for a cancer survivor is an egg omelet with spinach added to it. This would have major white blood cell boosting potential. But if you're having a hard time eating during chemotherapy, whether you just don't feel like eating or if you're very limited in the number of foods you want to eat, then you might want to consider taking a multivitamin. Or you might want to supplement with vitamin B12 and folate. These aspects to your diet are so important for supporting the development of white blood cell counts. If you're not getting these from your food, then you may want to supplement with them. But of course, be sure to check with your team. When it comes to supplements, you always want to check with your team. Because all chemos and treatments are different, there isn't a one-size-fits-all for this answer, so best to check with them. Okay, so now that you know how to bring your white blood cell counts up and what foods to eat during chemo, the next thing you need to know is what foods to avoid. That's exactly why I'm linking up this next video here. Click the link here, I'll see you in the next video.